Welcome to the Healist Podcast, where we inspire and guide healers through business expansion. We give voice to incredibly abundant healers to share their stories. We dive into the quantum field to unlock the energies of conscious creation. We also develop digital tools to help you grow, which you can find on healist.com. I'm your host, Yuli, and I'm grateful you chose to join this space. Now let's go deep. Hello, dear friends. Another amazing episode of the Healist Podcast. I'm so excited today to talk about new technologies to advance holistic healing with my amazing guest, Daniel Sears. Daniel is a retired Air Force veteran, devoted father, and brain training, longevity, and executive coach. With expertise in meditation, breathwork, and somatic practices, he is dedicated to helping leaders and corporations find balance in the modern business landscape. His neuroenergy coaching is a transformative framework that synergizes heart-brain coherence, mindset, and brain reprogramming, deep meditations, body work, and spirituality by combining cutting-edge technologies with ancient wisdom. He is my kind of guest, and I cannot wait to dive deep and learn more about his background and all the things he learned infusing technology in this amazing field of holistic healing. So my intention for the day, for this episode, is to really inspire our listeners to give a shot to all this amazing new tech that's coming out that is here to really help and enhance your practice as a holistic practitioner. And there's just so much amazing, innovative solutions that I hope some of you can work through the technology blocks to embrace. So, Daniel, welcome.
Wow. Thank you so much, Julia. That was such a mouthful of an introduction. I appreciate it. It sounds incredible to hear. And I'm just grateful to have met you and to be able to be a guest on your podcast and to talk about all of these really some revolutionary, some ancient ways of healing. And so thank you so much. I have a lot of gratitude for this and I'm excited about it. And thank you for your intention too. I think I'd like to share an intention of impacting listeners. And in the same way, I really love to bring new awareness to old information and new technology and how people can be using and integrating that into their everyday life in a lot of different ways. So it's really a pleasure to be able to speak about this. And that is my intention, to impact as many people as we can.
Love that. So as you might know, we love to just dive right in. So I'm most curious to know about your magic moment with tech. If you remember your experience first when you tried to infuse technology, right, into your practice, and this amazing aha moment that you felt like this is something here that really, truly transforms everything I do.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I remember when it happened. I remember when I was talking to a friend of mine in a men's group that I was in, and I was in the middle of actually a ketamine treatment that I had signed up for after I retired from the Air Force, where I was working through some of life's challenges and the impacts there. And I was talking to them about what I was doing to help my mindset. I was going through a lot of shifts in my life, one of the most difficult periods of my life. And I had been through some really, really challenging moments up to that point. And I was in this men's group and they were asking me what I was doing. And I was talking about the mindfulness. And I was in this men's group particularly, I wasn't talking a whole lot about the psychedelic journey that I was going on. But this individual that I'm thinking of, he was aware. He actually held space for me on one of the occasions. And he was just really asking me what I was doing. And I was having such a hard time talking to him about meditation. And he was telling me that it just wasn't for him. He had tried it. And I'm like, man, I said that too. I said all these things. And it's, to me now, it's like saying water's not my thing. It's just not my jam. Like I drink soda. And it's like, no, everybody is adaptive to water. Water is for us all. And meditation really is too. And it was just it reminded me that he was having the same struggle that I was having. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was trying it and I couldn't quiet the crazy mind. And I thought I just was not a good candidate for this. I need to do something different. And I was like, there has to be a way for me to get deeper and for me to also show other people and other men that I was impacting how they can go deeper in their mindset. And so I got right in and I was like, tech to help meditation. And I found a lot of equipment out there, and I found the Muse headband that was the quickest and easiest, most affordable way for me to get something that gave me the actual neural feedback of what was happening. And so I bought the headband then. I started using it right away and started using it with friends, just like kind of mentoring them on how to get deeper in their mindset, where to go. And this tech was just life-changing for me and for especially those first few men that they had no idea what I was talking about, and I couldn't go into their mind and say, I see that you're thinking. I see that you're still thinking. Like, I know that you're still thinking. And this technology does that. And it does it right real time, right in your ears with the neurofeedback. It's mirroring what's happening in your mind. And I thought that was just really incredible. And so I just dove headfirst into what type of wellness tech was out there and how it could transform our well-being and our consciousness too, expand our consciousness.
I mean, it's an incredible story. And you touched on something very important. I think a lot of people, and especially, not to generalize, but a lot of men, they do need that analytical proof, right? Before they can trust something. And myself included, I think I didn't get deep into the meditation until, I found teachers that were talking about it from more of a scientific perspective and had case studies to show and scientific research around it. This is when it really kind of clicked to me. I went from like a hobby, I would say, to my profession now, a daily habit, right? To meditate, because you just see, once you can kind of measure something, for a lot of us, it's an important point. And it's amazing that you kind of intuitively went to that place of, okay, if I can get to it just intuitively, right, let me find some data behind it. And I'm curious, and I think so many people can resonate with that. But I also think people are not aware that today there is actually technology that is able to measure the impact of meditation. So can you talk a little bit more about it? I know you mentioned the Muse headband, which I haven't tried, but I've seen before and heard amazing things. What is some of the other tech that you're aware of, or some other maybe methods even to measure?
Yeah, it's crazy to me sometimes to remind myself that not everybody is seeing the world through the lens that I am. And just because I've been so immersed in it now, and I meet somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got this device. What are you using? And to me, in my mind, it's like everybody's got some weights or some workout bands or a gym in the basement. They're doing exercises. And in my mind, I'm like, well, these meditation's the same thing. Like, so I ask people, what's the tech that you're using? And I get so many blank stares often because you're right. There's a lot of people that are unaware of all this wellness technology that's out there. And so I'm agnostic in the tech that I use. I love all the different technology that's out. The Muse is one of my main pillars just because it's the ease of access and the affordability and the features that it has. It's really great. So you have Muse, you have the Mendy, which is a headband. So you have a few different neurological things that influence the brain in different ways, and some of them are neurofeedback or they're passive, and some of them are active. And so the passive ones you just kind of sit there with them on. And so I have a neorhythm headband, which is pulsed electromagnetic therapy, and so that's something that's kind of passive. You're not really doing anything with it. You just put the headband on. It's got magnets that oscillate at certain frequencies to influence the mind. And so that's a really interesting piece of technology that's out. A lot of people are using PEMF in different therapeutic ways. And the headband, I think, is a nice way to deliver the tech to the brain. And so there's that. There's the Muse. There's the Mendy, which is a headband that's also a passive. The Muse is active. And then there's other apps that use the Muse. And so there's recently on Netflix, there was the show Quarterbacks, I believe it's called, with I think it was Kirk Cousins was doing the brain training in his car before he went into practice. And so he was, and I believe he was using Muse with MindLift. And so there's other apps that have MindLift actually has another sensor that goes on the head. So you can get more of a 3D map of the brain and more specialized intervention in the workouts that you're doing. And then there's Sensei AI, which is a really amazing headgear headset that has more sensors on it, and you can do more training, more specialized training with that. And so I really like that piece of equipment. I think it's great. There's companies coming up like Neurable, which has headphones much like these Apple ones that I have on, the same as yours, where it has sensors all through the earphones and along the headband. And so you get a pretty extensive mapping of your neurofunctioning there too. And that one right now, just having it, that's a little bit more passive. It just shows you as you're wearing it where your brain is. So then you can be working all day long, listening to some music or doing whatever you're doing with your headphones on. And you can see on your map as you look back, like, wow, 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I was very, very productive. I was locked in, and the neuroscience, whatever the feedback is showing me like I was really locked in. And from 1 to 3 p.m., I was really scatterbrained. So like maybe I should be doing some brainless functions then. Maybe I could be working out then. Maybe I could be doing something. So it helps you to build your day out. So I think that piece of technology is really cool. And I know that they're working on head earbuds, and they have some military contracts too, which I think is really incredible because they're working with spec ops, special force troops, that they are teaching them these deep mindfulness practices, and they're integrating technology into this because they know, like, we're may not be the world's greatest military right now. We're definitely one of them, if not the greatest, but we're using these technologies to teach the mindfulness practices to people that are doing really, really, really high level operations, black ops level operations. And so that kind of tells you there's something here for the other side, like of the civilian force, which is the executives, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the people who are working in high stress industries that need to make very decisive decisions, like very quickly. They have to be actionable in the way that they're making decisions very fast. And so they should be like, we should all be utilizing this tech the way that we can. Instead of being led by it, we're using it to strengthen ourselves. So I think that's really a really neat thing. Some of the other tech, though, what I really love is vibroacoustic beds, the meditative beds. And so there's one coming out. Opus is out right now. And actually mine is on back order. They had some things going on. So mine's been on back order for a little while. But the Opus is a really cool bed. And so it's vibroacoustic. So it gives you sound and vibrations in the bed with magnet transducers or whatever. And so they use those to stimulate the body and the nervous system at the same time, which is a really amazing thing. And so there's I Am in Harmony. There's a lot of different tech there's probably 4 or 5 different beds that are coming out that are like that. Tune is one of a really high-end, beautiful bed, beautiful design, and one of the strongest magnets, I believe, too, in the transducers that they use. So very powerful medical device for people to get some calm.
Those are all amazing inventions that I would love to include on the show notes for our listeners to explore, because like you said, there was just so much. But I think outside of those specific examples, you touched on a couple of important points. One, we are actually getting out of the bubble of meditation, right? Because now you're talking about, like, we started talking about measuring meditation, but now we're talking about actually expanding the use case to measuring executive function and some of the more kind of brain activity in general. And I think that's super interesting. And it's interesting that you got into it through meditation. But I think most people, like biohackers, they come the opposite way. They come because they want to, have a higher efficiency, right, or brain output. And then they find out that once they see the data, that the only way to improve that often is, to meditate. So it's I find your journey very interesting. But just to kind of acknowledge and maybe like slow down a little bit for some of our listeners kind of like new to this tech. So basically we're talking about a couple of things here. We're talking about devices themselves that are, measuring different brain activity, and we're going to talk more about metrics in a moment. And they are divided into different groups. I would say it sounds like the two main groups are passive, which are just measuring the activity, and there's also another group that is more active, that provides stimulations or interventions that actually help you also improve. And then on top of that, we have the ecosystem of all the apps, that some of them connected to the devices, but some of them are built on top of different devices and can work with their data, that then provide this extra layer of, coaching, if you say. And then, of course, on top of that, we can layer AI and, and whatnot, but not to go too far or too deep. Is that kind of a correct assessment? And in terms of devices, we're also looking at different groups, right? There's devices that are more like a headband style. There's more devices that are headphones that are coming out now. And then the other group would be the beds and the more kind of like immersive devices. Is that kind of a good overview, or are we missing something?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. You got everything there. And I think that they all are doing a lot of the same thing. They're calming our nervous system, or they're teaching us to calm our nervous system, or they're influencing the body in some sort of way that is on a level that it requires more depth to feel and to notice. And some of them are like, as you were saying, some of the beds, the vibroacoustic beds, those are really interesting because they're kind of like hacks to a meditative state. And I remember I was actually, a quick little side note on that. I was at a conference, it was psychedelics and psychology, and I Am in Harmony was there with their beds and their vibrational meditation cushions and some different things. So I got to try those out, and I tried out the bed, and I met the owner. He was really an incredible guy. And I got to lay on this bed and go through this meditation, and it was about 22 minutes. And this is in Vegas, packed venue. And I come out and I just feel like I'm on the clouds, and I'm glowing, and I'm walking through the crowds afterwards, and like people are just staring at me. I was just beaming with so much light and so much glow after this experience. And it was so incredible. It was ineffable almost. And so I think that these devices are extremely powerful in the way that they can help guide us. And we already know the power of technology. I mean, social media, there's so many studies and there's so much data out on how manipulative this technology can be. And so we really do have to work to use these things to help us in the positive ways too. So I think that's really important.
Really, this is what I love about wellness tech, right? But do you feel, still not to get too negative, but you feel like hacking the meditative state? Is there something there that we lose in the process?
That's a great question.
Or are we becoming dependent now on this technology? It's like, if I don't have this magic bed, can I get to this equal state of glow like you described?
Yeah, we can rely on just about anything. So that's where it's important to just use these things for what they really are. They're tools in our toolbox, and we don't carry around a toolbox every day in life. And so in the meditative world, in the meditation world, we got to remember that we don't need that toolbox too. But it's great when we do have the tools. And so I talk a lot about tools, and I use my analogies about tools because when I was in the Air Force, I was a specialist on C5s and C17s. I worked in maintenance, aerospace repair. And so I was very familiar with a lot of really interesting tools too. We used a lot of specialty tools, and we carried a toolbox around. But when we didn't have that toolbox and we had to get something done, we would figure it out and we would get it done. I think meditation is kind of the same way. You're like, man, I have these tools. It's really great, but today I don't have one, and I need it. These tools are just to set us up, strengthen us, so that when we don't have the tools, we're still able to like access our peace, access our heart, really, when we're in the thick of things, when we're in the throes and we're getting tossed around by the world, or in a relationship or at work or whatever, we've kind of set up ourselves with a little bit of a landslide to be able to come through on the other end unscathed. So, but yeah, it's important to say that and to know that, or to, I think, have the awareness. And so I think that's what's really cool about these is all of these tools are unlocking awareness. Well, most of them are. The majority of the ones that we're talking about today are. There's biohacking things like red light therapy, oxygen therapy, the vibrational therapy, theta. There's a theta chamber, this big, huge bed that spins around and does some really incredible things and just makes you feel like you're floating and puts you in a state of bliss, a state of deep meditation. And when we come to think about like what we really need, we know that we just need the states that these things are putting us in. And so they're helping us to unlock the awareness. And so when we're starting to be aware, like, oh, I'm only meditating when I have this headgear that I can put on, then what are you really chasing? You're not chasing the peace, the calm, the benefits that meditation gives you. You're chasing this one specific thing that this tool is like really geared towards. So I think it's almost hard to rely too much on them because they are invoking that awareness that tells us, oh man, am I balancing today the best way that I could be? So it's kind of iffy. I know some people rely on them, but most people use them and they use them for what they are, which is the map. And then they're like, oh, I don't need the map today. I know how and where to go to find this.
It's easier almost like when how to open the door, and then hopefully you're not gonna need this device every time. No, I love your analogy, and it's so also, and I would love to talk more about your journey later on. But just before we go there, I would love to also touch. We talked a lot about devices, right? And we talk about all those beautiful machines, but to really get people a better idea, what exactly are we measuring here? And without getting maybe like too data scientific, just in plain terms, like what are we talking about even?
Okay, yeah. So let's stick with the Muse because that's an easy one. Some of the other ones do different things, but they get a little bit more intricate because they're correcting things. The Muse is just reading your brainwave data. And so when you have this on, right now we're in like a high beta, probably like a high beta brainwave. We're connecting, we're on a deeper level, like we're very in it. We might even be bordering like some flow states with each other and getting into flow. And Hopefully, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and flow is kind of different and flow works differently. Sometimes like how we're in flow with what we're doing, but some people get in, or like you could get in flow with your work where nothing knocks you out of there. And so I love Disney movies actually. And so I watch Disney movies with my daughter all the time. And there's something in Disney movies for everyone, right? No matter what age you are. And so the movie, what's this? Soul, the movie Soul, where he's like in this flow state and he's playing piano. And have you seen the movie Soul? Okay, so this guy, he's a piano teacher and he starts playing his piano and then he just kind of disappears. Everything fades away around him and he's just in this dark space. And it's just him and his piano and he's just going to town and he's like kind of in a flow state. And so we have our beta brainwaves. So when we're rational thinking, when we're cognitive, when we're understanding, or when we're just operating in a doer mode, we're in like a beta brainwave. And then you have alpha brainwaves, which are more present when your eyes are closed. There's more association with executive functioning. So you have beta and alpha waves. You have theta waves, which are deep meditative waves. We're really flow state, really calm brainwaves. And then you have delta, which is like a deep sleep, deep rest wave, and gamma, which is a very high functioning, also very peaceful state. And so a lot of times we don't get that gamma because we're too busy in our beta brainwave. And so the way that this headband measures is it has its software, its proprietary system, whatever, to list whether you're in an active or a calm state of mind, or a neutral. And so it's grading you on those and it's giving you birds. So like I said before, our beta brainwave is when we're thinking, we're talking, is if we calm down and close our eyes, took a few deep breaths and started to like really dive into our body, we would start to drop more into like an alpha brainwave. And then it would show in the app, the way that it does it, it has feedback in your headphones. And so I set clients up with the rain. That's one of their main ones that they have. So you're in a rainstorm, you're thinking the rain is falling. So you hear in your headphones rain. The more that you think and the more that you're trying, the heavier the rainfall gets. The more that you calm your mind and allow your thoughts to just pass over, the rain starts to subside. And so you're getting that feedback of it's getting calmer and your thoughts are getting calmer. So that's very peaceful. And you're getting more into an alpha brainwave there. And once you're in an alpha brainwave for 4 seconds or longer, you get a bird that chirps. And so it's measuring your mental push up. And that bird chirping is like, wow, you really finally did this mental push up. You held yourself in your body without allowing your thoughts to drift away into something for 4 seconds. Great job. Let's see how many more we can do. And so it's really the way that this is working and the way that a lot of them work is they're grading like where you're at in your brainwave. Are you in some busy functioning, high functioning mindset that is just continuously pumping out thoughts and you're actually hearing those thoughts? Or is your thought machine just pumping out thoughts and you're not really paying attention to them? You're staying in your peace, you're staying in your presence, you're staying in your body, in your breath. And once it does that, then you're shifting your alpha brainwave. You're bringing more healing, more energy to a different part of your brain. So, and then when you're there for longer, you can actually, in the Muse, you can clear the rain all the way up. It actually sounds sunny. It sounds sunny and there's birds, nature's reward. Birds are just chirping like crazy and you're lost in like a deep thought, like a deep, beautiful place where anything is possible. And I think that's where you really connect to your heart. And so like I always say like that deepest part of the brain that you're able to get into, this deeper, calmer part, that's connected to the heart and the brain on the heart. And so you get more clarity there. And so there's different things that measure HRV, heart rate variability. And that's how the heart speaks to the head. And the heart speaks in the variability of the heart rates, like those little in-betweens in the beats. And so these are measuring those types of things, measuring what brainwave you're in, measuring what your heart rate is. And when you look at those things and you start to understand, you're actually connecting more deeply to yourself, connecting more to your heart, you're connecting more to your intuition. And so that's the benefit of it. And what it's grading is it's showing you like, wow, you really did a great job. You were in your calm state, you were in your peace, and you were connecting to a higher level brainwave here. And then some of the other ones, they do the same thing, but they might be pushing you towards something. They might be pushing you towards a different, if you're trying to repair a certain part of your brain, like if they do the 3D mapping of your brain and saying, there's a little less activity over here, a little less gray matter, let's focus on that. Then you would start to do exercises that focus in that part of your mind. And so that's where they start to become a little bit more difficult to describe, like in the layman's terms of like what's happening. But I feel like that was a lot.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, I personally can listen to it forever, and I have so many follow-up questions because,
Yeah.
I've been kind of playing with this data, looking at this data. And, one thing that you mentioned that is also, I feel like maybe it's like a different group of data is the heart-brain coherence, right? And there are also devices like the heart math that, again, I haven't tried personally, but I'm looking into all of them. I'm trying to decide, to be honest, like what is it for me right now that's going to make more impact? Because, what I've seen with the personal analytics in general, right, in that space, there's just so much data. There's this overload of data. And sometimes it's just kind of vanity data, right? That just kind of, okay, it's good to know, what does it give me? Not all of them are not all of the devices and the apps are doing, because we're in such early stages, right? Right now, they just kind of give you the science or give you data, but they're not necessarily like doing maybe a great job to make it more useful or actionable to an average person, right? You really need to be able to analyze. Like, average person is not going to be able to tell, what's the gamma state, looks like and how it's different from alpha. So it's great that, Muse found this kind of connection to nature as a way to describe those different states and guide you through. But I'm curious also about the process of the heart-brain coherence, and if you're seeing some interesting data there. And you mentioned HRV as well. And one of the things, it's a long question, but I'll tell you what I'm leading, because I'm still investigating the connection of HRV and that particular metric with the heart-brain coherence. Because what I've seen in my meditations, and I'm just using Aura, I'm not using necessarily the headband, so I'm not sure how accurate is that data, but because it doesn't measure the brain waves, we're just talking about HRV, is that the higher my HRV, which is supposed to be the healthier, right, the healthier metric, in my meditation, actually, it drops down to a very low number. It's almost like a scary number. That puts me in
Really?
a biological age of 80 or something, probably. And I'm always curious, and I can't get this answer from anyone that I ask who is that in that space. And what correlation are you seeing between HRV and heart-brain coherence? And if you can talk in general about the metrics that do measure the heart-brain coherence, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So I have my personal relationship with HRV and like what I believe is happening there. And so, there's a lot of studies coming out about with the heart math and with HRV. I love the little, so heart math and the global coherence, they have some apps that you can download, and you can use the flashlight on your camera to measure your HRV or your coherence there. And you can, there's a lot of things, the Aura, the Apple Watch. So it's a powerful thing. And basically, I think what heart math is showing is that your heart, the reverberations of your heartbeats are traveling away from the body at great distances. And I believe that many of the people that are studying this knew this for a long time, but couldn't prove it necessarily. With the advancement in technology, they're like, oh, this is actually here. And, we are standing on the other side of the room, and we can measure this person's heart frequency. And so that's really interesting data there. It's a interesting marker. Like, and to some people, I talk about this, and they're like, oh, that's all BS. Like, this is woo woo. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, if a muscle car is, if you're standing next to a muscle car and they rev the engine, you feel it in your body. Like, why is the heart any different? We have this powerful living thing inside of us, and it's beating. And of course you could feel it. And of course it's measurable somewhere else outside of the body. But I think that the HRV is really an interesting thing, because it tells you like where your coherence is with your brain waves. And so like, the Muse and a lot of things measures the heart rate along with your brainwaves. And so when I look at it, I've seen some people, and actually I had the pleasure of working with some professional tennis athletes, and they had really, really incredible, sharp minds. And tennis is like such a mindset game. You have to be able to act quick and get rid of things very quickly. And so offload stresses, pass points, mess ups, failures, whatever. You have to get those processed very quickly and then hit another 100-mile-an-hour tennis ball that's coming at you. And it was really interesting because both of these women had very, very, very consistent heart rates. And this was like old Muse, where they had their data displayed a little bit differently. And I think the new Muse like makes it a little bit more user friendly to look at, where the old style was a little bit more raw data. And since I had seen a lot of the data, I could compare it. And it was interesting because in some of the meditations, their heart rate variability was almost just like what you're saying. It was like a mezzanine. There was no variations in the heart.
I would get like 20, which is extremely low.
Yeah. And so then, but they were like really in their body in those times, and they were in their senses. They were in their aura. Like they could explain what was happening around them. As I was talking to them afterwards, I was doing energy work on them with the headband on. And so that was really a cool thing, because both of them did a meditation and then kept the headband on after the meditation while I did energy work on them. And as I was doing the energy work, her heart rate variability went all the way down. It was like like a clock, tick, tick, tick. And, but she could describe everything that was happening in her senses. And so, and her brain waves were extremely coherent. But then in the meditation before that, it was very different. Her heart rate variability was very high, and it was kind of sporadic all over the place. And her brain was very coherent at the same time. And she had a moment that was out of her body, out of this universe, that connected her to like source. And she spoke about it with me. And so it was really interesting. She had done both in one meditation. She had a very high heart rate variability, and then she had very low heart rate variability. And she could explain the difference with very great accuracy because she had such great mindfulness and such a deep mindfulness practice already. So I think that with the HRV, we have it's just another indicator of like kind of where we are. Are we very, very, very present in our body and with our situation? You know, are we here or there? Personally, what I think HRV is the head and the heart are connected, and the head sends a signal. And this is something the heart math says. We're up here in the front left part of the brain. It comes down through the vagus nerve into the heart, and it says beat, and the heart beats. And then that signal coming back from the heart has so much more information on it. And people get anxiety. And I tell them, I'm like, are you able to listen to the information that's coming back from your heart? Because there's a whole lot more information. That means our heart is sending us messages all the time. And I think when we have a really good heart-brain coherence, we're able to hear that message more clearly. We're able to feel it. It's kind of funny, like our heart doesn't speak our native language. It speaks like its own crazy language and imagery and feelings and textures and noise often we don't hear what our heart is saying. And so I think the heart rate variability and the heart math and all these exercises is just like another microphone or another speaker to hear the messages that are coming from our heart. Or notice, are we even listening to our heart? Are we just stuck in our head? Or are we actually trying to listen to or maybe are we stuck in our heart and we're just in our feelings constantly and we're not able to rationalize something? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
That is really fascinating. And I would love to kind of dive deeper into it one day and like just really have more studies around it, because I still feel like we're in such a early stages with all these technologies and data. But as you were talking about this, the two different meditation examples, that was just so great to hear, because to me, it just feels like maybe in the second one, when she had this high HRV, it just felt like maybe her heart was more activated because she was in that out of body state. Like her heart was actually like working. It was actually connecting with something higher, and it required like higher output, just like that race car engine that you described, that because we are connecting through our heart. We know that already, right? We're connecting to the source through our heart. And it's just like really fascinating to hear those examples in our stories, because I think they just provide a great like illustration to the data.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the heart's really an incredible thing. And like you said, it's interesting, like how people drop into their hearts and how they understand it. And for me, I just say like the heart is like an amphitheater, and it only projects something like a value. And so we get kind of noise when it doesn't value something. So when we're thinking thoughts and it doesn't align with our heart, it comes out as scattered noise. So we just put out this signal that it just kind of dies out. But when we have something pure and genuine and truthful and like authentic and like adds value, it passes the heart filter, it passes the check. And so when you do it in a deeper mindfulness state and drop into your heart and drop that message into your heart, then that reverberates through the quantum field. It reverberates and people see that and feel that and notice that. And that's when you become like this magnet for your opportunities or your passion.
I love that.
Yeah. So I think it's a powerful thing. And it's an amphitheater. It's where we go to scream our messages, and how well they're heard from there is, I guess, how well we put them down there from our mind. If it's of value and true.
No, that's incredible. And you know what I find most interesting, and you mentioned it briefly, like it's a obvious thing, but your energy work that you actually combine. Now we're getting to like really the juicy part of it because we talked a lot about the tech, right? And it's
Yeah.
interesting and fascinating. But to me, the most interesting part about what you do that you actually combine it with energy work and with your healing and holistic work, and that's just so cutting edge and fascinating. And I would love for you to like dive into it more, like in what ways and like how do you use it in your practice at what, stages of the session, or how do you even come up with it? And how was that process for you? Like decide which devices, which data, how to use it with clients, how to find clients that will be open to this. There's so many questions, but I think it's just really innovative what you do by infusing technology into some of those more, ancient practices.
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's like, how did I even come to this? I mean, it was just such an incredible journey. I mean, I had mentioned the ketamine treatment that I did earlier. And so I was actually in the middle of that and I was called to get energy work. And I was like, what even is that? I just had this draw and I started Googling different things. And I'm like, I found a Reiki healer and I was like, oh, I've heard of this before. And there was one in White Plains that I looked up and she was actually a therapist that infused it into her therapy. And she's like, you would have to be in therapy with me, but I can give you my teacher. And I was like, oh, great. And so I set up an appointment with her and got this incredible energy healing session. And I was into meditation already. So I went to my deep meditation space, my place that I went to, and had such a profound experience. And then the healer that was supposed to work with me, she was actually sick. And it was like towards the end of COVID. And she had passed me off to somebody that she trusted. But she called me a couple days later and she's like, I heard about your session. I heard it was very powerful and I can't take no for an answer. I want you in my class. I'm going to give you a scholarship. We had a really amazing conversation. She was like, come this coming weekend. I'm going to give you a scholarship. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. And so such a profound experience. Actually, when she did my attunement, it was crazy. The outlet blew in the room that was playing the radio or the music player that she had. It was playing music and it blew out. And I had no idea. She was doing her thing. Just the music stopped. I'm in my place. And then I went to a room to do some quiet, peaceful meditation afterwards. She came in and she started talking to everybody about what came up for her in the sessions. And she looked at me and she's like, out of my 20 years, I have never, ever had anything like that happen. You have some incredibly powerful energy. We went into her room and sure enough, 2 outlets in her office had blown out. And she was like, that is the amount of energy that you created in here. And we did it together. Like it was just so empowering and impactful. And so now I infuse it into my practice with people. I do one-off sessions. I do VIP days where we integrate a lot of different technologies into a session, a day of like healing and transformation and clarity. And the energy work is just so impactful. And I think it's really interesting how I've somehow come to this pairing and the process of unfolding, which I call Reiki Plus. And so it's Reiki plus integrative technologies. And so we start with a brain training session, or we start with a little bit of a debrief where we're at, where this person's at, and then some brain training goes on. So they're kind of in this state of receiving. They understand how and where to go. They got some feedback. And then we go into a breath work to calm the nervous system, and then a deep spoken hypnosis style meditation to set them off in a place far, far away. And so they're really in a state of receiving. And then I do the energy work with them. And so then I perform hands-on and hands-off Reiki energy healing with them. And then afterwards, the messages, the downloads, the healing that people have done is just astonishing to me. And then I give them a debrief of what came up for me in the session. And sometimes it's in my body, sometimes it's visions, sometimes it's in their body. But I've learned really how to plug into my own heart, and then through that like avenue, I'm able to plug into somebody else's energy and just help them heal in the different ways that they need it. And I mean, this is basically like a technology that is above all of us. Like I can't explain it, and I don't think anybody can. We can talk about the direction and how we do it, and there's trainings for that. But at the end of the day, it's one of those ineffable things. But it just happens time after time after time again. And it's the same with me, and it's the same for all the people that I work with. It's really incredible. But yeah, sometimes I forget like all the different ways that I've been working with people over the past few years, and the energy healing has definitely been a pillar of it.
I just find it super innovative that, you're able to actually measure the energetic impact that you're having on those clients. And it's just like so much more powerful.
Yeah. It's Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I think we had a conversation about him, and I think he's got such a great formula for helping people to just burst open their energy, burst open their hearts, and have these like big experiences. I know that he started to measure the energy in the room, and I think that's really awesome. I know that he talks about it in a handful of different places where he measured a baseline of the energy in a room. They did a meditation, and you could see the coherence of the energy was very high. And then when everybody dropped into a deep meditative state, the energy in the room dropped. And so the coherence went down. And then it kind of came up to a lower baseline. And so then the room was like really locked in, which I think is incredible. And then he measured the energy in the room the next day, and nobody was even in the room. The same people were outside at one of his ranches doing a walking meditation. And at the same exact time that the walking meditation was happening, the energy in the room went up a little bit, and then it went down even further. So it's like their energetic signals were still in that room, and something was being measured there. And so I think it's really cool how people are measuring energy and how they're measuring like what's just even heat signatures. I know some Reiki practitioners that do heat maps of people, and they'll find cold spots in the body where there's not a lot of blood flow, energy flow into that area. And they do it afterwards, and they're seeing there is an actual energy shift in the body.
It's so fascinating. And I'm actually going to be one of those, in one of those Joe Dispenza case studies in a couple of weeks in one of his retreats.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I'm jealous. I want to be there with you. That's great.
Yes. I think what's most interesting also that he measured people, a person that was completely unrelated to the group in the room next to that big room that had nothing to do with meditating and nothing to do with any of that, had no idea what they were doing. And even their energy was shifted significantly.
Wow.
And I think that's kind of like the effect that we don't realize sometimes. The work we do, a lot of is individual and one-on-one, but it's really changing people around us. And I think that's like, for me, at least from after getting, I mean, I knew energy was always powerful, but I always saw it as kind of like this personal development work. And I think after learning more and more about it, I'm realizing like, this is not a personal world. This is, we're doing it for our families, we're doing it for our environment, and it just infuses it with so much more purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the biggest reason, like you said. I mean, we're all in these like energy bodies. And I say it when I lead a breath work, I say, try to drop into your heart, but just be present with this moment, because it doesn't matter if you're the one that does it or not. We're all in here, and we're like a set of dominoes. And when one of us falls, like everybody's going to start falling into this like deep heart frequency. And it happens, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to breathe my way into quantum heart realm, or, into some transformative thing. And they're not the ones. They can't get out of their head. They're just breathing. But then it finally happens because somebody next to them or somebody across the room, it's just like having this deep moment, and it just floods the room. And you can feel it. The energy of the room just shifts, and I feel it on the inside of my body when I do it. It's like goosebumps on the inside. It's like wind going through me. And it's just such an incredible, powerful feeling. And it's really beautiful too, to see that happen with people and have that room shift. So it's a really cool thing. But yeah, it's big.
Daniel, we are so out of time. I feel like we can keep talking forever, and I have so many more topics to explore with you. So you will have to come back. But as a closing statement, is there anything you would like to share with our listeners?
So actually, my daughter asked me something the other day, and so I'll share this with you. She asked me if I could go back to myself at her age, and she's 12, almost 13, what advice would I give myself then? And she had very specifically said that I couldn't change anything. I couldn't change anything. I had to still do my life the way that I did it. But what would I want to know? And I said to stay flexible, to keep my body flexible. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things for her, because we were talking about it earlier before we jumped on here, like the somatic approach to healing. It's in the body. Like our body is this hard drive. And so we have to stay flexible. We have to move the energy through our body, and that's through movement. Movement is medicine. And by staying flexible, we're pushing ourselves to the ends of our range of motion, and then we're going past it for that flexibility. And there's something that happens with our emotional resilience, our cognitive performance, and just the way that our body stays healthy with that flexibility. And so continuing to stay flexible in the body and in the mind to just shed that emotional baggage that we're all carrying, and to let it out in a somatic way, to pair any kind of therapy, any kind of talk therapy, any kind of meditation, any kind of practice that anybody's doing out there, pair it with some body work, whether you're doing some percussion, fist pounding, some stretching, some movement, like keep the body moving, and just drop as much of that stress and that baggage, that emotional baggage that we're carrying in that process. And just know that you're doing it. Identify that you're doing it. It's powerful.
Amazing. Very powerful advice. It was such a treat to have you. Really, thank you for bringing your big blast of energy. My outlets in my room are still working, so that's good news.
That's good. Stop doing that. Yeah, I'm not blowing open any more outlets. But thank you. This has been such a pleasure.
Amazing.